How has Jalen Brunson been so good lately? We're going to get into it on today's bonus episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, including how off-ball movement could actually be one of the keys and how Josh Hart plays a role in the whole thing right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And, of course, you'll see him literally tonight hosting Locked On NBA. Wow, what a night. Big day for Gavin, twice in one day. And we wanted to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks a part of your day today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate being a part of your daily routine, especially hopefully you got that notification bell set up, the auto download function on your favorite podcast app, so you never miss one, because we're here 6 days a week this week with this lovely bonus episode. We've got our buddy Bailey Liao coming on with us today to continue our discussion that we had post-trade deadline for the Knicks, talking about things that Jalen Brunson could do to continue improving and continue playing as good as he's been playing lately in this next back half of the season post-trade deadline. We also want to remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And, of course, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. Let's not hold things up any further and get right into things with Bailey, talking about Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and much more right now. So Jalen Brunson has been playing some of his best ball the last few weeks. Obviously, two huge daggers, the most two recent games for the Knicks. He's just been Captain Clutch again, doing everything that you want to see out of him. I think a lot of it has just come down to getting to his spots and really just some of the shots that weren't falling at points for him earlier in the season starting to fall again. He's kind of had his struggles that have kind of happened in waves with, things on the inside weren't falling, or like his floater wasn't falling for a little bit, and then like his three wasn't falling for a little bit. And now it all seems to be coming together for him. Has there been anything that you've seen that has sort of tipped you off to the performances that Brunson's been having lately? Like, have you seen anything that's changed as far as how his approach is to the game and how the team's been approaching using him? Or is it just so simple as Jalen Brunson just does this every single year, where he just figures it out around this time of year and goes on a heater?
Yeah, definitely. I made a video where I was pointing to the fact that he actually moved off ball a little bit more, and that he was catching the ball a little closer to the 3-point line. But honestly, like, sometimes he's just making shots now that he wasn't before, and it's not like he's not like getting incredibly like more open shots. He is actually just making them, and when it looks like he's making them, everything's like so easy to say, like, oh, everything's flowing well, right? And I think part of it is, yeah, he was in a rut, but like I never really had problems with like the shots he was getting. They just weren't falling. I did have a problem with when they weren't falling, he wasn't shooting as much, which I think even in a rut, you need him to shoot the three a lot. But even now, like, yeah, he's off ball a little bit more. Mikhail's creating a little bit more so that when a team's in rotation, you get it to Brunson. He gets to play with a little bit more of an advantage. And yeah, all those things matter. But at the end of the day, like, he's still playing a little bit of a hero ball. And now when he's playing hero ball, it's what he did all of last year, right? And all of last playoffs. He's still excellent at that. And now, like, he's just kind of hitting that stride where, like, he's back to just making those shots.
Yeah, and this is a point you made in part one, but I just don't think it can be driven home enough. My single biggest fear with this team is like they get into tough situations in the playoffs and they just default to like, all right, Jalen, carry us. And we're just one, we don't have the defense for that anymore, because as incredibly good as Jalen Brunson is, you get into the playoffs, you have top coaches, top defenses, waves and waves of size being thrown at him. He is just not going to be quite as efficient as he's in the regular season, even if he's exceptionally efficient given the circumstances. And last year you could survive that because you're like, all right, we have Isaiah Hartenstein on the other end of the floor for 2.5 games at least. We have Mitchell Robinson on the other end of the floor, and we can still hold up. We can just lock in defensively, and we can play Jalen ISO ball. And this just is not the same team. And like, I think this can kind of be the big picture thesis for all this episode, for this whole episode. Like, can you drive in enough muscle memory in the regular season when you're not playing those best teams on a night-to-night basis that like Mikal can do it too? And like, Mikal also needs to be confident enough to say, like, I can take a shot in this situation. And you look at the Rockets game where Jalen scored, I think, something like 11 of the final 13 points. The one point he didn't score was a Mikal. I can't remember. It was an ISO of him coming off a screen. I have my notes up so I can look. But he was a drive on Jalen Green, and he got to a right elbow fadeaway jumper, and it gave the Knicks the lead for the first time in the fourth quarter. He's going to have to make that shot. There's going to have to be times where Jalen drives, and he's been cooking for a while, and 3 or 4 guys crash on him, and he kicks it out to OG, and OG trusts that he's going to get the pass, and he rises up on the elbow, so he's one pass away, and it's a clear lane for Jalen, and he can make that shot. Cat, you're like, we're hoping we get a better version of him than we did like these last few games, but like, he started to kick it out more on drives. Like, I say all this to say, like, it is partially Jalen cooking and Jalen being good, but I think the way Jalen stays efficient while he's doing it is if other guys are contributing and taking a load off him. As Bailey, you were the guy who highlighted like the new substitution pattern with Mikal. Like, I do think there's something to be said for all these guys. Like, when there's balance, like, it just inherently makes you harder to defend. It also keeps everyone fresher and allows you to have some of those miraculous moments that we've seen from Jalen Brunson these last few games.
Yeah, and I'm really sorry. I just wanted to say real quick, I'm really glad you brought up the catch and shoot opportunities, because that's something that I always harp on too, and I feel like that's always my off-season goal for the Knicks is get Jalen in catch and shoot, opportunities more, get him moving off ball more. And I mean, the numbers are starting to bear it out, like that he's doing just as good as you would expect normally. Like, so according to NBA stats, maybe this is slightly imperfect, but they do a pretty good job of encapsulating this stuff. He's taken 2 threes off catch and shoot per game this year so far and shot 43% on them. So that's awesome, right? Until you look at the last 10 games, he's now up to 2.5 attempts per game, and he's been shooting 54% on catch and shoot threes. I mean, getting him quality catch and shoot looks is almost as tantamount to me as working those sort of looks in for like Steph Curry, right? Who's made a whole career out of that, where he's not just the point guard. He's not just the guy that can break down the defense and, set the table for other guys and shoot off the dribble and everything else, which obviously he's fantastic at. And so is Jalen Brunson. I'd say that Jalen Brunson maybe swaps out some of Steph's like perimeter magic for his magic that he does inside the 3-point line, in the mid range and trying to get to his floater spots and all the pivots and everything else. Both of them have their ways of just putting you in a blender and scoring points on you. But Brunson, I think, is like, again, it's like, it always feels sacrilegious putting anyone in the category of Steph Curry, but like, he's becoming one of the closest guys to Steph Curry in the league as far as guys that you want both handling the ball for you most of the time, but also aggressively trying to get them looks off the ball when they're not handling the ball. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's always been one of my biggest things for Brunson. And then that just inspired me to look up that number, and like, the numbers are screaming, like, keep doing this, keep getting this guy more opportunities like that.
And Bailey, I'll let you expand on it, but yeah, and you mentioned it in the first part of our show, but he kills people on pump and goes, and he just gets so few of those opportunities normally. But you talk about someone who's overqualified, like, forget about Mikal Bridges with an advantage. Jalen Brunson with an advantage is about as deadly as any player in the NBA.
Yeah, because no matter who the player is, it's natural for a defender to help. And like, almost every single team does have rules for how you're going to send help. No matter if it's Curry, no matter if it's Brunson, it's very rare that you're just getting face guarded for the entire game, no help, right? So no matter what, like, if Mikal drives, Hart drives, OG drives, creates advantage, if Cat drives, creates an advantage, and Brunson gets the ball, you're getting a closeout. And like you mentioned, right, Brunson on a closeout is incredibly dangerous. Like, he's gonna score that almost every single time, or make the right play almost every single time, right?
Yeah.
The defense is just now in rotation, and then you have a team with every single player is basically connected, as long as you're aggressive. So I think that's really the advantage of moving him off ball, as you said, Alex. But also, it's just having variation in what you're going to do, right? So we talk a lot about how it helps Brunson move off ball, and he can be a better player like that. But it also just forces a defense to cover a different look versus, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. Brunson's going to walk the ball up, high pick and roll, and then we can be in our defensive scheme, same exact defensive scheme again. So I think there's a lot of advantages with him moving off ball, and a lot of that is also getting him more catch and shoot opportunities. Like, what if he's in a funk? Like, what if he's not shooting the greatest this game? What are you going to call to get him out of that? Are we going to call high pick and roll? Are you going to call an ISO? Maybe, but maybe like just throw in an off ball play where he can come off like a double screen and like get the ball on the move and then have him get an easy layup like that. So it's just like adding variation, both offensively and defensively, just adding variation to what you're going to run. And it's just way harder to defend if you're just doing different things.
All right, guys, we're going to be right back with Bailey. We're going to talk about how Josh Hart plays a substantial role in making Jalen Brunson's life easier and the case for giving him and Mikal Bridges even more time on the basketball. But first, with Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive with Robinhood Gold. Your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
And today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Are you looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game? Finding the right tickets at the right price can be a headache, but with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. Well, let me tell you, I slept on an event that I probably shouldn't have slept on. I really like Daniel Tosh, and he's coming to the area soon. So I love a good comedy show. Unfortunately, he's playing smaller theaters, and they sold out very quickly. And I listen to his podcast every week. I didn't even think to look right away, but I checked Gametime Picks, and they found me some fantastic seats that were in a good section and right where I wanted to sit for not as much money as it could be. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. So if you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think he like also what helps that and what's helping them feel more comfortable calling more of those is the fact that Josh Hart is kind of taking a new leap as a ball handler this year. I think that he has been way more comfortable than ever as far as bringing the ball down the floor, running a pick and roll set, like being the guy that kind of sets the table a little more. And that's why we're seeing him now like average, you know, he's got to be averaging close to 10 assists over the last month or so. Like, I mean, it's been just a monumental step up for him lately. And I think that's super valuable too. Like not just for the fact that it takes that little bit off Brunson's plate and allows him to work off ball, but also just, I think that's going to be tantamount for keeping Brunson fresh throughout the rest of this year. And then especially during the playoffs when, you know, if he's going to be relied on to kind of play ISO Brunson during the playoffs, that's going to take a a toll on him physically, and it's gonna, he's gonna get beat down. And we've seen the last couple playoffs that doesn't seem to matter too much to him, and sometimes it seems to give him more power, weirdly. And yet it's still good to have that option there. So I think, as much as we're talking about Jalen Brunson, I think Josh Hart kind of is the guy that's become sort of, if we're sticking with, referencing the greatest basketball team of our generation and the Golden State Warriors of the mid, 2010s, he's kind of taken more of a step towards becoming more of a Draymond Green this year, in terms of how much he's trusted with brain, not just providing, a little bit of token ball handling here and there, but like legitimately being the guy that brings the ball down the floor, sets up the offense, and lets Jalen Brunson work off ball from time to time. I think that's like super key. And the fact that he's taken a step forward has really helped Brunson, especially in these last couple months, as Josh is kind of hitting his triple double machine era here. It's definitely been a huge help, I think, to Brunson overall to have that available as well.
And Bailey, you mentioned this, but when other teams put a center on Josh Hart, which obviously we saw the Celtics do in that first matchup, like how do you go at that? Ideally, do you just like spam pick and roll with him? Like some of it is, and like this is always going to be an issue with Josh, like he just has to be a very willing shooter and have a quick trigger. And if you're the Knicks and you're playing those teams, obviously it's not ideal, but you got to live and die with Josh Hart taking open threes. And like to Alex's point, like when the Knicks looked good earlier this year, a lot of it was that Josh Hart was just shooting fantastically from those and being willing to take those. But how do you approach and how do you attack it? Because I would expect tomorrow we see quite a bit of that against the Celtics.
Yeah, so it actually depends. So depending on how the center is actually playing Hart. So if they're like really, really deep into drop, you can just have Hart be the screen, and that opens up everything for Brunson because now you're basically getting drop coverage of Hart.
If we're talking Josh's Draymond Green, that is maybe the ultimate example of it. But,
yeah. What OKC did in that game was they just trapped really hard. In situations like that, it's not as easy to just send Josh as the screener, but there are a couple things that you can do. So like if they're gonna really, really trap off that screen immediately, just flip the screen a couple of times so that if Hartenstein is too deep leading into the direction where he thinks the screen is coming from, you have a really open look the other way. So you can just go that way. Another thing is just have a really early short roll or ghost to screen, and then see if you can get a 4-on-3 advantage with Hart. And as you mentioned, Alex, Hart has been incredible this year as a creator. And my take for the original question is, like just spam Hart pick and roll where Hart's the creator. Like I'm actually totally fine with that. I think he can do that. Part of it is probably because he also talks about his role a lot, that he doesn't necessarily think that that's his role. If I had my dream case, I would just encourage him to be the ball handler a lot more. And I have actually a really interesting stat. I looked at it a while ago, so it might have been different, but I was basically looking at how many possessions the second best player on the Cavs, on OKC, so like J-Dub, Jalen Brown, Garland, how many possessions they had in isolation and how many possessions they had as a pick and roll ball handler compared to Josh and Mikal combined. And it's significantly higher, right? Like all these teams actually don't play through the superstars as much as we do. But in terms of efficiency of Hart and Mikal in those possessions, it's about the same. And I'm not sitting here saying that Josh Hart is better than Jalen Brown or Garland, which actually I don't think like that's a crazy take this season.
The advanced numbers say he's like way better than those guys. Which
however much in terms of strictly on-ball creation, he's not really at that level, right? I'm not arguing that. What I will argue is Hart or Mikal as the on-ball creator with Cat and Brunson off-ball. That's a lot of space versus like what Garland is working, right? That's why the efficiency is close. And obviously with increased usage, the efficiency might not last. But I think there's a really strong argument to be made, like, let them actually just create a lot more in set plays. Like, let them be pick and roll ball handlers, let them ISO, because you have Brunson and Cat surrounding them. And that's so much gravity on Brunson, on Cat, that feasibly those plays can be really, really strong. So I've always been a big proponent of Hart just having the ball more. I really did think that it should be Hart over Mikal, but Mikal has been absolutely incredible these past few weeks as well. But like some combo of both of them, I think it's really, really useful if they just like have more pick and roll opportunities, have more isolation opportunities, whatever it may be, but like just have more on ball creation opportunities. And I think they'll look good in that role.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we've done it. We've figured out the Knicks. We figured out how to make them win a championship. So now's as good a time as ever to wrap this show up. Bailey, thanks so much for coming on, doing not one but two parts with us. Obviously, if people are not checking you out already, they should be. Play-by-play on YouTube, which you can find. It's at Play-by-play Film Breakdown. If you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you should definitely be subscribed to Play-by-play Film Breakdown. You're on Twitter, Bailey Liao 1. You do stuff for the Strickland, so definitely check out at the Strickland on YouTube and on Twitter as well. But is there anything else you want to plug before we let you go?
No, that was good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cool. No problem, man. Thank you for coming. And for those of you that are listening, thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed both these parts. And we'll be back with more coverage for you guys of this big game over the weekend, coming up after the weekend, and then a bunch of big games coming up, and then the All-Star break and all kinds of fun things. So we can probably roast the All-Star selections too at some point. As we were recording this, they were selected, and Jalen Brunson's 1/3 of the All-Stars team is not great. Thanks, Kenny Smith. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you all for listening, and talk soon. Peace out, everybody.
Great. I can hit end record. Bailey.